Cool. Okay. Next up, I'm going to introduce, there's going to be a fireside that I'm not leading, so I'm going to be introducing a couple folks on stage. This gentleman is known as the Kite VC. They're actually, I believe, a sponsored kiteboarder, kite surfer. They have a very unique background. They were an early investor in Canva, in Zoom, and over 20 publicly traded companies. And they have a really interesting background because way back decades ago, they joined an early startup that was working on semiconductors. And that startup sold some products to Apple, to NVIDIA, and now it's one of the top 10 most valuable companies in the universe. It's called TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, if I'm getting it right. They are the first badge #1 at this company. And so I'm really excited to welcome up Bill Tai, who will be interviewed alongside Yasmin, who's one of his partners, investors, who invests in public tech for good, has done over 100 investments, including ACTAI Ventures, which Bill Tai is working on now. So welcome up Yasmin Drummond and Bill Tai. Yasmin, here's your handshake. All right, take it away. Give me 2 mics. Yeah.
I do have some slides. I need a microphone. Yeah, this is on. Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd just put a little perspective around a little history and my background to queue up for the fireside. So I started as a chip designer. I am now a venture capitalist, and I have somehow managed to have a bunch of companies hit it. There is this phrase that I think everybody's seen, I'd rather be lucky than smart, but I would add to that, for you, for your careers and for your money, you want to put yourself in the right place at the right time. And so one example, and also a little context on what you're working on. So this is a tweet from 2010. So 15 years ago, I saw this wave. On the agenda, you'll see I'm chairman of the board of Hut 8 Mining. That's a Bitcoin mining company. It was a subsidiary of another mining company that we set up actually in Eastern Europe called Bitfury. We've carved off 2 chunks of that. One subsidiary went public as Hut 8, another Cipher Mining. Those 2 are worth about $6 billion. The parent company still exists and operates mining centers in a whole bunch of other countries that don't have legal frameworks that are solid enough to take public. But I think back at that time, I think Bitcoin at the time was probably, it was 13 to the dollar. It's around 7 cents. I really had no idea, how well it would do, how big the industry might get. I think all of you have a sense that AI is going to be a big thing. I think, as you know, AI has been around for quite a long time, and people always knew it had potential, but you didn't know until now. There's kind of a break point. And I think there's this phrase, I don't know if it didn't render real well, but what that's supposed to say is that people greatly overestimate what they can do in a year and greatly underestimate what they can do in 10. And it's going to be really interesting to see what this industry looks like 10 years from now. So as I think about tech and where you are, tech is sort of like a series of concentric waves. And if you imagine a flat puddle of water, a little water drop that was silicon, and as the waves radiated, the number of people that the technology affected got bigger and bigger, more than exponentially. So I started off in the chip business, but then started to migrate up the stack and ended up moving into venture capital, and then funding not just chips, but then switches and routers and hubs. And in '94, I started an ISP. That ended up becoming 10 data centers, or data centers in 10 countries, I should say, and Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Salomon Brothers took it public in year 2000. I retired for a while. I did become a kiteboarder. I got sponsored as an athlete. When Web 2.0 hit, that's another ring. The value moved from chips to boxes to networks to the user interface. And that was the era, like 2003, 4, 5, 6 of the Facebooks and the Googles and companies like that getting started. And data science, which had also been around for a while, became viable as a place to start companies. And I think the notion of data science as a industry, Hadoop companies, the Databricks and Snowflakes, things like that, became viable to become really, really big. This is me back 40 years ago. So I think not too dissimilar from a lot of you folks now. I think I'm probably the oldest person in the room. I may not look like it, but I was not unlike sitting in a room that looked like this. So I came out here with a semiconductor engineering degree to find other people that I could actually talk to. And I think you guys are in this room because you're interested in collaborating with other people. What was amazing about that era, in the 70s and 80s, and this thing ran until about 1987, there were a bunch of unknowns that would show up with pieces of wood with parts stuck on the wood, like the original Apple computer. And those kids were Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and Bill Gates and Paul Allen and Nolan Bushnell that had started Atari. Some of the guys that started Sun. Alan Shugart was there who started Seagate. And all of this value came out of all of these unknowns because they were part of a community sitting in a room just like this. So you guys are honored, and look around because some people in this room are going to do some amazing things. I came out here both for the Homebrew Computer Club, but I joined the CEO of Fairchild Semiconductor. And you guys are all in software, so you may not know that legendary story, but that was basically the root of everything in the Valley. So Sherman Fairchild, wicked smart, very difficult, a little eccentric, hired other wicked smart, difficult, eccentric people. They couldn't get along. So a bunch of the people left and started Intel and National and AMD and LSI Logic, where I was. And then after my stint there, and also at that company, LSI Logic, was Jensen Huang. He went off to start NVIDIA, and I went off to go help the government start this company. And again, you never really know. You trust your instincts. No one had heard of this company for the first 35 years of my association with them. I think most of you probably had not even heard of the company until 5 years ago. It's now worth $1 trillion, and it's the 8th most valuable company in the world. But it just kept ticking. And so I think, you want to look, and I'll get into how I pick companies, both for investing and where to put my time. But some other things that I've worked on, I am the first investor in Zoom. Eric Yuan had actually backed me in a machine learning company at the founding of Treasure Data, and Rob used to work there. Again, I think all of you probably use Zoom. I don't know if you guys use, so this is another wacko story. So the world is really an amazing place. I went to kiteboard in Perth, Australia. And I'm going to get no hands here. How many people have been to Perth? Oh, holy shit. Because literally 90% of the people I meet in Sydney have never been to Perth because it's too far, and it's 6 hours away. It takes like 26 hours to get there from here. But I met this 23-year-old gal making high school yearbooks in her mom's living room. And she, on the side, was teaching Adobe classes and described what she wanted as a product to make it easier for her to drag and drop photos and text and all that to make your yearbooks. And I asked her, can you build that? Can you code that? And she said, no, I'm not technical. And I said, well, if you can find someone to code that up, I might back you. And I spent 3 years looking for a co-founder for her. And I eventually found her a guy named Cameron Adams, and we formed Canva. That company is now $200 million a month. It's been profitable for 7 years. 75% gross margins, 28% operating pre-tax. But a lot can happen from anywhere in the world now, which is a big change from when I moved out here to Silicon Valley just so I could find a few other people that could talk to me. Anyway, so I'm a seed investor, and I think we're going to move into chat. But that was, I hope, enough background to give you context. And my email is there, and my Twitter handle if you want to ever contact me.
Cool. So did I hear correctly that you're related to Jensen Huang?
Yeah, this is actually a funny thing, too. So out of this little town in Taiwan, Kaohsiung, Taiwan, there's a family that had 6 siblings. 2 boys, 4 girls. Jensen is the son of one of the girls. Lisa Sue is the granddaughter of one of the sons. And my uncle's wife is the daughter of one of the daughters. So, yeah, so we're all from the same family. Yes.
Cool. So you talk about being on the right wave at the right time. What are you doing on the AI wave, and what are areas you see that could create decacorns?
So I have a couple of investments in the AI area, one of which I put together, but I've got 2 very fun ones that are consumery. I don't know if any of you have seen magichour.ai, but it's a fun little company that came out of YC, and I put a little check in there, and they've never had to use my money because it was instantly profitable. But you can check out magichour.ai, and it's not like super hard technology, but they, I think, really understand a user need and a problem to solve. There's a Harvard MD that I backed in an AI emotionally intelligent therapy company. I put that one together with Lars Rasmussen, who is creator of Google Maps, who helped me find the CTO for Canva, and also Christian Sigeti. So he's the technical founder of X.AI, if you don't know him. But they're just a really strong team, and I think it's a very big consumer space that we'll see. It feels like there's a growing need for mental health, aids. The one that I did put together as a co-founding investor, I took the technical team out of Cambridge Analytica about 4 years ago and repurposed them and pointed them towards healthcare. So it's called dyad.net. We have a semantic AI healthcare product for healthcare practitioners that does value-based care management and kind of a physician assistant and workflow automation product. It's growing about 25% month over month, so it seems like it's working off of its seed, and we'll see. But it feels like healthcare is one of those things that is just a massive opportunity. I mean, obviously it's not a great thing that happened, but the execution of the United Healthcare CEO tells you there's problems in the system. Healthcare is now 19% of GDP in America, $1 out of $5 spent, and most of it is not spent for the right reasons. United Healthcare, the other company, actually I'll digress in a second. They turned down 32% of claims. And after the guy got executed, the other CEO in place did a webinar internally, and it was amazing just to watch. But he's like, don't talk to the press. They don't know what they're talking about. And it is our job to keep the healthcare industry on its rails. So we deny claims for a reason, to keep the cost structure efficient. But the incentive systems obviously are really broken. So I think if there's one thing that AI is great at, it's creating efficiency in systems. So I think there are probably 100 different opportunities to create something, and a good number of those, because of the size of the market, could be $10 billion, $100 billion companies over decades. I never thought TSMC was going to hit $1 trillion, so you just never know. Like, I think the space is certainly big enough to produce a company worth $1 trillion at some point. So, Center for Medicaid Services by itself has a $2 trillion a year budget. So it is a massive space, and most of that is wasted. The other company I seeded in that space that I think is doing remarkable things is Color Genomics, also known as Color Health. It started with the name Color Genomics. They dropped the genomics part. It's color.com, but they have basically AI-based cancer diagnosis and therapy.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to learn more about Dyad, I think my name is on the agenda somewhere. Feel free to reach out to me if you have ideas for like partnerships or whatever. I just want to say healthcare, yes. I am like, please, can we get better health? Because I mean, how much will we care if there's all these robots walking around and we have AGI, but like your mom who has a stroke still can't get a doctor's appointment, and your friend that has PTSD is still suffering, and we're all in pain and all this stuff. So for me, I'm like, yes, healthcare. If you're doing anything in healthcare AI, would love to help you, because it's so bad now, and it can be so much better with AI. So what other areas outside of AI are you looking at? I think you have some cool ideas about energy.
Yeah, the market value moves to the bottleneck. And I'd say 3 years ago, it was silicon production, which is how all of you heard about TSMC for the first time, because NVIDIA couldn't get enough capacity. And then it moved to NVIDIA itself, and I think now it's increasingly power. And it's not just availability of power, it's going to be the structure and delivery of power. And I think what I see happening over the next probably 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 decades, a little bit like the internet, I think there has to be a complete redo of the electrical grid, just completely redone. And it reminds me a lot of what happened to the phone companies, moving from kind of a 70s circuit switch architecture to a 90s packet switch architecture. If you think about the nature of that change from voice to packet data, it became very bidirectional. And I think if you look at power companies, if you think about power grids and water grids, old power grids and old water grids look pretty similar. So it's easier for people to conceive of water. You basically pump a lot of water into a system, you put it up high into a water tower, so there's high pressure, and it comes down those pipes in a branch and tree architecture, a little bit like a cable system. And you got to keep filling it at the top. It comes one way. Electricity used to be like that. You would burn coal in one central place, have a generator, and then you'd run lines that branched and treed off of that main plant, a lot like a cable system or a water system. Now what has happened is in the last probably 10, 20 years, there's been a big change in the source of power, and in 2018, there was a complete switch in cost structure, where in 1 year, the cost of providing electricity from solar, hydro, wind, and nuclear was already there, became less than coal. So now you took that branch and tree architecture and you stuck on the endpoints sources of energy. Kind of like, cable TV used to just feed a picture one direction, and suddenly they just stick cable modems all over the edges to make them bidirectional and have packet protocols, synchronous CDMA, and other things to move the data. Now you have very lumpy sources. The sun's shining, power's on, sun's not, it's windy part of the day, it's not windy. And so you have all of these ups and downs and loading all these electrons into the grid. And like a water tower, if you put too much water in there and it can't go out, it will explode. So now I think grids are going to need to be completely redesigned. They're going to have to become a context-aware cloud. I think I do have some ideas around how an AI, if you had an energy LLM, that you could feed the data of all of your users historically, plus outside inputs, weather and other things, so that you could, in a predictive way, be ready to load balance the network and turn on and off different switches so that you could feed the power and load balance everything. Someday that's going to be needed, and I think it will make power companies a lot more efficient. In the Bitcoin mining business, we became aware of a bunch of grid operators which, due to the cyclical usage of electricity, if the grid operator is generating too much and it can't be taken off the grid will explode. So they either have to pay a ton of money for batteries, or they pay somebody like us 1.5 cents or 2 cents a kilowatt hour just to burn the electricity. So we would actually stick Bitcoin mining machines on some of these grids, and people would pay us to make Bitcoin, just but for certain parts of the night when they weren't using the electricity. So I think there are a lot of ways to even out the grid, and I think it's one of these, like healthcare is a big opportunity. Remaking the world's electricity grid and power sources is probably bigger. So I think it's a great opportunity, but a very slow rolling opportunity.
And also helps our health if we have
that
good
too.
energy. So.
That too.
Okay, democratizing intelligence implies decentralization. You started the Necker Blockchain Summit 10 years ago to catalyze decentralized applications. what do you see as opportunities for blockchain now with AI?
Yeah, everyone's trying to figure that one out. I think it's, obviously you guys are all programmers, so you know, but blockchains are basically just distributed databases. So it's a different way to handle data. There are some limitations with blockchains. They are not very fast compared to kind of single point centralized ones, but they are great at handling decentralized data and great at kind of validating or verifying. So I do think there's going to be some intersection where AI agents sit on top of decentralized database architectures to deliver things maybe a little bit faster than they could from a central source at the edge. So I think if you look back at the evolution of internet hosting, content distribution, over time, so in the very beginning, most of the main web companies, like a Yahoo, for example, when Yahoo got started, there weren't a lot of hosting providers to go to, so they had to build their own data centers. But over time, there were many, many data centers, so the concept of co-locating your equipment with other people came, or in a decentralized way, working with vendors like Akamai. And I don't know how many of you guys know Akamai, but in an edge network, if you were a provider of a video stream, if you were in the center of the network and had to serve it to 1 million different people, 1 million times, one each, versus having clusters at the edge of maybe 500 or 1,000 people in each location, and once that video got pulled and cached at the edge, it didn't have to traverse the entire network, right? So you reduce the congestion in the lines in the center, and that content would sit at the edge, and the next person in that neighborhood that wanted it would just come locally. I have a feeling that there are going to be some applications that look like that, because in the AI space, latency is going to become important, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if someday we have a world where every mobile cell phone tower has a couple of GPUs that are basically runtime inference. So I think there's an opportunity also to have an infrastructure layer that looks a little bit like a set of companies that look like Akamai for different kinds of edge applications. I think it's one.
Cool. Well, lastly, as we consider democratization on a global scale, how do we ensure that the benefits of these technologies are equitably distributed across different regions of the world, particularly in developing nations or communities that are often left behind? I know that's a hard one, so you might not have the answer, but.
Well, I think if I compare what the world is like for people in general, technologists also, compared to 40 years ago, holy shit, is it different. I mean, when I started in this business, you literally had to move to be in a location because, designing a semiconductor chip, we'd have to put together a team of 100 people and have them show up in the same building and cut pieces of plastic to make the masks, stuff like that. So you literally had to be in one location, and it was like kind of a sucking sound where there was brain drain from every other region of the world to get them to come to Silicon Valley. And I think when the internet hit, it allowed the potential for every software engineer in Shanghai or Bangladesh to be on equal footing from a knowledge perspective. And I think more recently with companies like Zoom, you really can work anywhere as part of a team if you're architecting it right. So I think the opportunity is there. I think the missing part is, access to technology and also education.
Maybe Gigaverse is.
Oh, yeah. So
that can help spread, the education part or bring communities together remotely.
Yeah, so I have funded a company with Yasmin called Gigaverse. There's a gentleman named Omer Luzati who previously ran all real-time products at at Meta. And he pulled in the inventor of WebRTC and a couple of AI guys from Google. And we are doing a video-based community management platform. So very different than, say, like a Reddit or Discord, but think of a video-first way for people to engage their communities. And there's an AI kind of a producer element to that does instant polling and other transcription and fact checking and stuff like that. So it's a way to basically spread your knowledge to communities that could be distributed around the world.
And all you need is a phone, right? So I know with
Yeah.
Elon's new rocket, Starlink is going to become more and more and more available to people all over the world. And so as long as they have a phone, they could get on Gigaverse and maybe learn some of this stuff, or you can give talks, or anyone can give talks.
So I'd love for you guys to test it out. We're still in beta, but it's gigaverse.com. It's available on iPhone and Android. And if you want to light up communities, private or public, around the world, check it out. And I'd love feedback on it. If there's glitches and hang-ups and stuff that you don't like or stuff you want, send it to Yasmin and I.
Yeah, and if you have a community, it's really good because it helps. It basically assigns you like an AI moderator kind of thing. So if you have a community but you don't really like moderating or you don't know how, this is a really good, it makes your life a lot easier, basically. Yeah. That's just one of the cool features, but.
Yeah. Should we do open Q&A? And how much time do we have left? Okay, 1 or 2 questions. Whoa. I guess.
Can't really see you.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Hey, Bill. My name's Oscar. My dad's also from Kaohsiung, and my mom's from Tainan.
All right.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't think we're related. So my question is, I think what really impressed me about your resume is just the endurance of excellence of returns over so many decades. And I think as we look to tech history, there are people who, maybe got PC right, but they totally missed the internet, or they got internet right, but they totally missed mobile. So I'm wondering, what is your personal process for keeping up to date on the state of the art and keeping an open mind and learning the right lessons from each technological wave?
Yeah, it's a personal challenge for sure, because a lot of the folks that I started in Silicon with stayed in that business. Actually, we had I wouldn't call it PayPal Mafia, obviously very well known. In our era, the Fairchild Mafia is freaking amazing because it's tens of trillions of dollars. It's much bigger, but no one knows. And even at LSI Logic, the crew I worked with were Jensen that started NVIDIA, the guy that really turned Broadcom into Broadcom, Marty Colombato, he turned it into the ASSP company, the CEO of Xilinx, the CEO of Altera, and there's probably a dozen more, that all came from that little core, and everyone just kind of stayed on the same wave and rode it up. And it's a little unnerving to step off the train when it's moving and to hop on to the next one. And the move from pure silicon to things made out of silicon wasn't so hard for me because it was still kind of price performance. If you knew in advance that the product you were building would be 5 times, 10 times the performance and half the price or a tenth of the price, you knew who the customers were that would buy it. So moving from chips to boxes to comm equipment, not so hard. The implementation to networks was not so hard either because it was just staring me in the face and the wave was so easy to ride. The super, super hard transition for me was the one to Web 2.0. Here it was, nuts and bolts, semiconductor physics hardware guy, and kids were lighting up these apps in dorm rooms for 100K. And I felt like I was walking into a bar watching 10 people sing, and the short fat guy was going to become Phil Collins. I was like, whoa, how do you know? So it took me a couple of years of experimentation before I kind of got that. And then when mobile apps got connected to cloud serving to SaaS models, that one I could see a little bit better. It was more kind of a price. You knew what the efficiencies would be. You knew what the parameters of what you could tweak were and how you could build a better product, which is, like Zoom. A lot of people thought I was stupid to fund Zoom because there were, all these other video conferencing companies already, and the most common response when we ran out of money, I was trying to raise for them was, you're competing with Microsoft and Google, and they have infinite money, and their products are free. You're stupid, But there was clearly a more scalable way to do something. So I'm not answering your question directly, but I think to the extent you're willing to keep learning, I think that's the hard part. You have Jobs and other people used to say, you got to stay curious. And that's the thing. It's very easy to stay in your comfort zone and just keep riding the same wave. And those opportunities will continue to grow too. But I think for an investor, and also if you're investing your career, the high risk reward, high beta part is moving to the emerging wave. Because a lot of the, like if you think about the surface area, so think of every new industry as like this little sphere that's growing in all directions at once if it's the right wave. And if you can capture more surface area on that sphere, and when they're smaller, it's easier to do, you get a greater share of the reward, right? Once you get to something that's TSMC size or NVIDIA size, it's hard for that sphere to get, for you to have a lot of surface area on that gigantic sphere as it goes. So I think it's really about picking your market and learning fast. And I think the other advantage, if you can move fast, a knowledge advantage is a powerful thing. Because you're all on a wave that while AI's been around for, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years in its different forms, the wave is moving really fast now. And every 3, 5, 9 months, it's almost like a different world. If you're entering now versus when you entered, and I don't know, everyone in this room entered at a different time, think of all the knowledge you accumulated in a very short time, right? So these days in the early part of a moving wave are especially important. So you got to hop onto them quick. You have to not be afraid to fail and just learn from your mistakes and keep going. A lot of it's grit.
Thank you, Bill Tai and Yasmin, for the Fireside. Great to have you here.